who are we? Where did we actually come from? It is the biggest question there is, and right now, we're going to take a whirlwind tour through 65 million years to find the answer. So let's just dive right into this epic story of survival, adaptation, and, well, us. Okay, let's get the biggest one out of the way first. It's the question you've probably heard a million times, right? Did we, Homo sapiens, evolve from the monkeys that we see today at the zoo? The answer is a huge, simple No. It's honestly one of the biggest myths in science, and we're going to bust it wide open right now. Because the real story, well, it's way more interesting. To really get our heads around where we come from, you have to completely ditch the idea of a straight line. Instead, I want you to picture a gigantic, sprawling, branching family tree. So here's the key. Evolution isn't some ladder we climb to the top of. Nope, it's a huge tree. Millions and millions of years ago, there was this common ancestor. And from that ancestor, all these different branches started to sprout. One branch eventually led to modern monkeys. Another branch led to the great apes, like chimpanzees and gorillas. And our branch, well, that one led to us. We're not their descendants. We're more like their really, really distant cousins. And what's just mind-blowing is the scale we're talking about here. Our story kicks off 65 million years ago, right after the dinosaurs checked out. But just look how far over to the right our own direct ancestors, the first hominins to walk upright, finally show up. They only appear about 4 million years ago. We are a brand new chapter in this incredibly ancient book. See, before we could become human, we first had to be primates. And all those things our ancestors figured out for living up in the trees, that gave us this fundamental toolkit that made everything that came later even possible. Our earliest primate ancestors left us an incredible inheritance. Those grasping hands for holding onto branches, they later became hands that could make tools. The forward-facing eyes for judging the distance to the next branch, that later helped us hunt. And those bigger brains, just for navigating a complex 3D world, they became the foundation for, well, all the intelligence that was to come. All right, now for the first really big leap, the one that set our ancestors on a totally new path, separating us from all our ape cousins for good. And it didn't start with our brains. It started with our feet. Bipedalism. This word is everything. About 4 million years ago, the climate was changing and forests were turning into grasslands. And our ancestors, like the famous fossil Lucy, they stood up. This wasn't just a new way to get around. It was a total revolution. Why? Because it freed their hands to carry food, to hold their babies, and eventually to build the entire world. And this right here is the proof. The brain of an Australopithecus was only about 450 cubic centimeters. That's roughly the size of a modern chimp's brain. This is so important. We walked upright for millions of years before our brains really started to get big. It was feet first, brain later. So once our ancestors were walking around on 2 feet, a whole new world of possibilities just opened up. This next part of our story is all about what they did with those newly freed hands and their slowly expanding minds. Okay, so picture this. For the first time in millions of years of primate evolution, our ancestors' hands are totally free. That is a moment just brimming with potential. Which, of course, leads to the big question, what did they do with this incredible new gift? They started making things. Meet Homo habilis, also known as handyman, who showed up around 2.4 million years ago. This was the first species to intentionally smash rocks together to create sharp-edged tools. It might look really simple to us now, but this was a huge cognitive leap. The ability to look at a rock and see a tool inside it, and then to know the steps to get it out. And now look what happens to the brain. It jumps up to about 650 cubic centimeters. So why the growth spurt? Well, these new tools let them get at all kinds of super nutrient-rich foods, like bone marrow and meat. This high-calorie diet was basically rocket fuel for a more energy-hungry brain. So in a very real way, our tools helped build our brains. Next on the scene is a major player, Homo erectus. They took these basic skills and just completely changed the human game with 3 massive world-altering innovations. First, they created much more advanced tools, like that classic teardrop-shaped hand axe. Second, they learned to control fire. Think about that. It gave them warmth, protection from predators, and cooked food, which unlocked even more nutrients for their growing brains. And third, with all this new tech, Homo erectus became the first of our ancestors to walk out of Africa and start exploring the rest of the world. They were the original pioneers. Okay, now let's jump forward in time to a world that's not so ancient. A world where we were not the only kind of human on the planet. We actually had company, and we definitely had competition. Let's talk about the Neanderthals. For the longest time, we had this image of them as brutish cavemen, right? Well, forget that. We now know they were super intelligent, very capable evolutionary cousins. I mean, they had huge brains, even bigger than ours, sophisticated tools, and they had culture. They buried their dead, they cared for the sick, and for tens of thousands of years, they lived right alongside our own species, Homo sapiens. So if they were so smart, what gave us the edge? Well, the answer seems to have been something internal. Around 70,000 years ago, something incredible happened inside our minds. We call it the cognitive revolution. We developed this complex language that let us talk about things that aren't real. Myths, gods, money, laws. And that was our superpower. It allowed us to cooperate in massive numbers and build entire societies based on shared stories. And that ultimately let us outcompete every other human on the planet. So we have just raced through millions of years. What's the takeaway? What's the point of this incredible journey from a little tree dweller to a species that can literally shape the planet? You can really boil this whole story down to 3 revolutionary steps. First, we stood up, and that freed our hands. Second, we used those hands to make tools, which grew our intelligence and let us control our environment. And third, we developed language and culture, which let us organize ourselves on a scale that this planet had never, ever seen before. So when you zoom all the way out and you look at this vast, sprawling story, what does it really tell us about who we are today? It tells us that we are not separate from the natural world at all. We are a product of it. Our intelligence, our creativity, our very existence, it's all the result of an unbroken chain stretching all the way back to the earliest life on this planet. We are nature's most advanced expression so far. The current, cutting edge of a story that is absolutely still being written.